at the beginning and it doesn't just start in the middle of me talking like it has been doing kind of lately. But welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Valentine's Day. Hopefully you guys are having a great day today. And from the look of the charts, we could be having a really good day with Sundial stock. It pumped up Friday. I know you guys probably know that already, but it's exciting stuff that we haven't completely reverted from where we were. We're actually holding pretty well. So we're going to start off taking a look at some of the charts and hopefully see a very green day today. And good morning, Vivi, Austin, Mike, Shadow Girl, Rocky Mountain Gobblers, Matt, JL, Sub-Zero, Greg, and Manny C. Good morning, guys. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. And we'll even check the Rumble chat. Well, there's nobody in the Rumble chat. All right. Anyways, guys, we are seeing good stuff in the markets and good stuff for Sundial. Now, hopefully we're going to move higher. There are some overarching fears surrounding the whole markets that we've got to talk about today. If anything's going to take Sundial down, it's probably some of the overall market fears. It's not necessarily bad news for Sundial, right? It's just overall market worry that people have regarding two situations, and you can see them on the headline, right? On the front page of CNBC, stock futures fall slightly as investors weigh Russia-Ukraine and the Fed's next move. So those are the two big things on investors' minds in the markets. And Sundial did actually show over the past couple of days that it could outperform the markets. So even if those do end up moving stocks down in general, maybe Sundial pulls through. Maybe Sundial outperforms the markets and doesn't necessarily move down on those catalysts if the S&P ends up moving down on those catalysts, which it has been doing the past couple of days while Sundial has actually been rising. So hopefully Sundial can resist moving down on the Federal Reserve inflation fight situation and the whole Russia-Ukraine tension, potential war that we could see. If anything's going to get it, it's going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation, right? If we actually go to war, then nothing's immune to bearish behavior. But I don't think that will be the case. I think nobody really wants that. Even Putin doesn't really want to go to war. So all things considered, I think we've got a bright future ahead of us for Sundial. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. We're going to talk about, first, the two main risks to the market, just for anyone who's interested in overall market mumbo-jumbo. And good morning, Megan, and Quaid, and Greg, and Matthew. Good morning. First time commenting. Nice, man. All right, so the main thing that we're worried about at the Fed is actually harsher than expected rate hikes and tightening, and these would mostly be coming from Federal Reserve Chairman of St. Louis, Bullard, right? He says that the Fed needs to front-load tightening because inflation is accelerating. So overall, we've got Powell and we've got Bullard. Bullard is not in as prime of a position to actually do what he wants. You know, it's mostly up to Powell. Powell's the end-all, be-all of it, but Bullard is going to try to convince him. He says, I do think we need more front-load. We need to front-load more of our planned removal of accommodation than we would have previously. We've been surprised to the upside on inflation. This is a lot of inflation, he says. And he's the St. Louis Federal Reserve president. So he also said, our credibility is on the line here, and we do have to react to the data. However, I do think we can do it in a way that's organized and not disruptive to markets. So, you know, he, along with Powell, nobody wants to disrupt markets, right? We've been in a really good way with the markets for a long time. Nobody really wants these things to come crashing down. That would be rather gloomy, right? Nobody likes seeing the markets in a bear market. We would rather have the markets be in a bull market and have stocks soaring and people making money and have prosperity and then people can buy whatever they want. But, you know, part of the problem is that there's a lot of inflation that's been popping up over the past couple of weeks and past couple of months. Ever since we've had this soaring stock market, a lot of people have had some extra cash, not just from the stock market, but honestly a lot of it from the policies that were enacted, the stimulus checks and paycheck protection program and unemployment and all kinds of stuff, just passing out money. And Zach has some good news. He says, we're not going to war with Russia. It was all another lame attempt to make Biden look bad. He had a win with diplomacy. Pelosi gave it away yesterday. Yeah. I mean, I sure hope we don't go to war with Russia. We'll see. We'll see what happens with it. I don't think we will, right? I don't think that's a likely scenario, but we'll get to that in just a second, right? So Fed President Bullard of St. Louis says, I think my position is a good one, and I'll try to convince my colleagues it's a good one. So he's going to be trying to convince Powell to raise rates more than expected, to do it sooner than expected, to cut the bond purchases sooner than expected, and we'll see if he can do it, because he thinks inflation is a big issue. And if you look at the charts of inflation, it would appear that he is correct, right? Inflation has been moving up dramatically, and nobody's happy to see it. Even people who are making money in the markets aren't happy to see that inflation's going up. They'd rather be making money in the markets and have inflation actually be deflating, right? They'd rather have deflation and have the profits that they get from the markets be worth more. They'd rather be able to buy more stuff than less. Nobody wants this higher inflation. So it's scary to see that over the past 10 and even 25 years, we're at record rates of inflation. And Powell, seems a bit worried about it, but Fed chairman or president of St. Louis seems a little bit more worried about it, and it seems like he's really trying to do something. Whereas Powell is a little bit more dovish. He is trying to keep the markets happy, and it's fair to say that Bullard is as well, right? Bullard is as well. He doesn't want to disrupt the markets, so we'll have to see what his approach is and who we can actually convince to do it, because overall, we could be looking at a pretty nasty situation if the Fed really goes in and raises rates to the extreme, to an extent that would actually be combating inflation. Because in order to have real interest rates, you'd have to have the nominal rate be higher than inflation. Because if the interest rate that you're getting paid in the bank is, say, even 3%, and the inflation rate is 7.5%, well, what's really happening there is you're losing 4.5% to inflation, and the real interest rate is negative 4.5% because you're losing value. I don't think anybody is actually suggesting that they raise rates to 7.5%, though. Even Bullard, I don't think, is recommending rate hikes to 7.5%. We'll just have to see what happens with it. The Fed, I think their primary concern is the market. Secondary concern is inflation. I mean, they had to kind of know what was going on when they were printing all that money, injecting all that stimulus into the economy. They couldn't actually have thought the whole time they were saying that inflation was transitory that it actually was. I think primarily they wanted to prop up the market at whatever cost they were willing to bear regarding inflation, and now they're positioning themselves as well as they can at a vocal level, right? They're trying to say that they're going to combat inflation in a big way to make it as painless as possible, but there's still going to be some inflation. I think they realize that, and we're just going to see what happens with that whole situation. Now, the other situation that people are worried about that could potentially be damaging for Sundial, that we're not happy to see, right? We're not happy to see the situation, is that the White House, and they did this a couple of days ago, they warned that Russia could invade Ukraine within days, and they urged Americans to leave. Now, we touched on this story just very briefly, mostly the aspect of Americans being urged to leave the Ukraine. But the White House is warning that Russia could invade within days as well. And they said this on, Friday, and they said maybe it could happen within 48 hours. Well, it's already been almost 48 hours, so we'll see if that actually ends up happening. It would have to happen pretty darn soon if that was going to happen. I don't think there's going to be an actual invasion, and I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong, but I'm not too bullish on an invasion. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody really benefits from that. These kinds of conflicts, they tend to be zero-sum games. And I think that most of the time people like playing positive-sum games. And when I say that, I mean, when there's a war, you're only really trading around resources and destroying resources. So technically, it's actually a negative-sum game. You're actually losing something, and someone else is losing something, and maybe you gain more than you lost during a war because you have to spend all kinds of money on troops and military equipment, and just funding the military, right? You have to spend money on food and logistics and pay generals and weapons makers, and it's a costly endeavor. And maybe you gain something at the end of it. Maybe you gain some land that's more valuable than that. But at the same time, your enemies and your allies have lost money on the endeavor as well, right? They've spent a similar amount of money on troops and feeding them and paying them and all kinds of stuff, the equipment. It's all really expensive. And at the end of the day, all you've really done is trade land around and destroy resources. So I don't think anybody really wants that when they look at this thing in the big picture. Nobody really wants a big war, a big conflict. I think they all realize it would be not as good of a world every time we go to war. And, for the most part, I think people are understanding of that. Maybe some people are a little bit less well-hinged, and some people might be willing to go to war. Hopefully Putin's not one of those people. Hopefully our president isn't one of those people. And hopefully China doesn't have to get involved, because that wouldn't be good for anyone. So that's what we've got on the Russia-Ukraine situation. Overall, it's a scary thing overhanging the stock market, and people are a little bit worried about it. And we're definitely seeing some negative pressure because of it. Some people are selling out of the markets just because they don't know what's going to happen. They say, all right, once this whole situation gets figured out, I'll buy back in. And they don't care if the markets go up 5% or 10% in the meantime, right? They just want to avoid potential minus 50% drop if there is a big war going on. And, to be fair, if they want to do that, that's okay. I prefer to just stay in the markets. I don't want to sell out every time there's a big worry like this because these worries actually pop up more frequently than people tend to remember. I mean, I remember just before the pandemic hit, there was some Iranian general who had been hit with a missile or something, and people were worried about that. And a year before that, there was a whole Russia-Ukraine situation going on. So it seems like these things just tend to resurface, and I tend to just stay in the markets, not worry too much about what's actually going on. And if there is a big world catastrophe like the pandemic, then I tend to view it just as a buying opportunity. So at the end of the day, it's important to have some cash, and we can talk a little bit about maybe positioning, right, and having an emergency fund, and we could talk a little bit about that later on in the stream, because I do think it's important to not just be all in anything. And that's just my opinion. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on what they think, where they think their money should be, and it's all valid. It all is based on the individual, and wherever you think you should have your money, that's fair, and you can have it there. But I do like a more diversified approach, right? I think that it makes sense to have money in different places, to have money spread out, to not be all in assets, to not be all in cash. And some people will disagree. Some people just want to put all their money where their gut is. And if that makes sense to you, then all right, you can go for it. But we'll talk a little bit about positioning later on. So we do have an interesting tweet from Elon Musk, and it doesn't really have too much to do with finance or the stock market or anything like that. But it is Elon Musk's tweet. I thought it was a good one. He says, the duty of a leader is to serve their people, not for the people to serve them. And I'll throw a like down on that tweet. If you guys want to like the stream, that would be much appreciated as well. But I think this is a very positive tweet. And I think it's important to show this stuff every now and then, just so people remember it. And that's all we'll really say about it. But thank you, Elon, for saying that. I mean, he has a bunch of followers. It got over 100,000 retweets and almost 600,000 likes. So I figured we would share it here as well. I could retweet it, but my Twitter doesn't have very many followers, so it probably wouldn't have too big of an impact. Now, it looks like we did take a little bit of a hit. We took a little bit of a dip with Sundial. We're currently sitting around 63.5 cents, so we're not quite at the highs. We hit 68.5 in the after hours on the run-up, and we'll see how high we can get today. Now, it is entirely possible that we could shrink down a little bit. This was a big move that we went through, and not on the most direct catalyst, right? There wasn't a huge catalyst that came out towards the end of Friday that actually pumped us up. It was mostly just momentum and some form of hype that built up. No real reason too instantaneous to be moving Sundial up. But overwhelmingly, I think there are a bunch of reasons why we'll likely be moving up with Sundial. And there are a bunch of really good catalysts, not just for their underlying fundamentals, but for the hype that could surround them. And the hype is really what's done Sundial justice in the past, right? Sundial was not up to almost $4, or really above $4 at the true highs because of fundamentals, right? It wasn't actually a huge fundamental move that got Sundial up here. It was a hype-ish move. It was a meme stock move. And it was a legalization hype move, right? So that's what I think could be the best for Sundial in the short to midterm. Obviously, over the long term, if Sundial continues to do well fundamentally, then they'll probably continue to outgrow any move to the upside that they get through a meme-driven rally, right? If they move up due to a meme-driven reason, then they'll probably make a short-term to mid-term high, much like they did over the past 2 years, right? They hit this $4 mark on some meme hype, and potentially they had the potential to stay there, but it was very unlikely that they were going to stay at the highs. Instead, they moved back down and actually made higher lows, right? So they never actually got down as low as they once did in the past, around 13 cents. They made higher lows because the company was in a much better fundamental position. They got a lot more cash on the balance sheet. They raised a lot of capital here, and the management maybe started taking the company a little bit more seriously. They started making better decisions, better acquisitions. Now they've got Alcana under their belt. And I think that over the long term, we could, especially when legalization is really around the corner, when we're actually probably going to see it in the next month or two, that's when Sundial could be at its highs, right? And that would probably be a short to midterm high. I'm not opposed to the idea that Sundial makes another high. It could be higher than this. It could be lower than this. Probably higher, in my opinion, right? If we're actually getting legalization, I think it would be a pretty big high that Sundial would make. But we're probably going to see a short to midterm high at some point. And the question you have to ask yourself regarding Sundial is, do you want to hold through that high? Do you want to accept that there's a high that's going to be coming? Do you want to maybe make a bet that there's not going to be a high, that it's just going to be a steady run-up? Or do you want to sell some when it gets to a certain high? Is there a price that you want to sell Sundial stock at and then try to buy back in cheaper when some of the hype has worn off and then hold for the long term? Is it a long-term play? Is it a short-term trade for you? You guys have to start thinking about these things now, because it looks like we're starting to begin a real uptrend in Sundial. And it's very easy when a stock is running up to get lured into a lot of the hype and to hold longer than you might want to. So it helps to set these levels. Do you want to sell Sundial when it's $5? Do you want to sell when it's 10? It helps to have some mental levels that you could potentially be selling at. And, that's something that I'm thinking about. I'm not entirely sure where exactly I'll be selling, but one thing that I'm almost certain I'll be doing is selling covered calls against my shares in Sundial. That's actually what I've done in the past when Sundial was at these higher levels, mostly when it was above $1 is when I was selling these covered calls. And what those allow you to do is hold Sundial shares and then say, we'll look at the Sundial option chain and say in a month from now, Sundial is much higher. Say it's at $1. You can look at the options chain and say, all right, well, what's out a month from that? And you could sell maybe a $3 or $4 call on Sundial using your shares as collateral. You can collect some premium. And if Sundial was actually running up in a big way, then these options would probably be much more expensive and you'd be collecting a lot more premium. And through that, I've actually been able to completely negate any initial investment that I put into Sundial. I've collected more premium selling those covered calls on Sundial than I have put into Sundial stock with my initial investment, at least in the first brokerage account that I bought it on. There's been more buying in this account that I bought into sub $1, where it was way down, where it was beaten down. I think we're in the green at this point, and I'm happy to see it. But it does help to start thinking very loosely about what prices do you want to start selling Sundial at, right? Where would you be happy selling Sundial? And it's very easy to think about that when it's 60 cents as opposed to when it's $3 and it just doubled in the past 24 hours and you're really hyped up. It really helps to start thinking about it when it's 60 cents. You can think about it with a little bit of a clear head. There's not too much momentum at the moment. We're seeing some, but it is a useful thing to start planning out your move, right? Do you want to sell it at $2? Do you want to start selling some at $2? Do you want to start selling, small increments every dollar that it goes up, right? When it hits 1, when it hits 2, when it hits 3, you have to decide for yourself, right? That's your own decision how you're going to be doing it. I tend to like selling the covered calls when there's a lot of implied volatility. I think that the implied volatility can come and go, and the premium that you collect on those can oftentimes be better than selling, right? Because say these covered calls, they could go up significantly in value over the next couple of weeks if Sundial starts pumping up, right? You could start selling covered calls for $4 and collecting premium. Currently, they're actually worth 0 cents, but you could be collecting premium in a couple of weeks from now if Sundial is much closer to 4, or if it just makes an outsized move to the upside, then the implied volatility will raise the price of these options to something more significant. Maybe you could get 15 cents per share selling a covered call for $4, and then you wouldn't even have to sell unless it hits 4 by that strike date. So there are options out there for Sundial, and we can definitely talk more about that as it gets higher and higher, as it gets closer to those higher prices, and we actually start to see more implied volatility, more momentum. We'll definitely be talking more about that, but this is something to start thinking about, right? You want to start thinking just very loosely about where would you like to sell Sundial, or do you want to hold it for the long term, right? That's a decision you might want to start thinking about and making now. So that's just my non-financial advice on the issue. But that is a mistake that I think a lot of people have made in the past. I've made it in the past. A lot of the times you're just not quite thinking about your exit strategy, right? You're thinking about buying up these shares, and then you don't quite think about where am I going to sell? What's a realistic price to sell at? And one way that I like to figure out potentially realistic levels is by looking at the market cap of these stocks, because a lot of the time what ends the rallies on these stocks is the market cap just gets too large and it gets too difficult to continue pumping money into it, at least from the likely sources, right? From retail. Retail only has so much capital behind them. And institutions, if legalization is really on the horizon, which it seems quite likely that it is, we're going to look at some reasons for that in a minute. But eventually, people run out of capital. Now, currently, Sundial's market cap is $1.366 billion. So, how high of a market cap do you think Sundial can get to? It's really easy to look at the share price and ignore the market caps for these stocks and just say Sundial 66 cents, it's cheap. It could go to 10, 20 bucks, $100. But you have to think about the market caps as well. How much capital can really flow into these things? Now, in the past, when we've seen these big rallies, we've looked at market caps before. I've been watching market caps at least, and I've noticed that they can hardly ever get to 100 billion. 100 billion is absolutely massive. It's for the biggest of the biggest squeezes and pumps that you see out there, right? Dogecoin, I think, got to around maybe a 70 or 80 billion dollar market cap at the very peak. AMC, we can take a peek at and reverse engineer what the market cap was at its peak. It's currently trading at $18 with a $10 billion market cap. So if you about 4x that to get to the highs of AMC stock, we'll pull it up right over Sundial for a second. I think it was close to 70-something dollars. Yeah, 72. So that's actually, I think that's exactly a 4x of 18. So about a $40 billion market cap. So $40 billion was where AMC topped out. Now you have to think about where do you think Sundial will top out. And keep in mind that, the market cap can change, that, they can offer more shares and whatnot, that they can do buybacks and all that. But keep in mind the market caps of these stocks, right? Think about the market cap. It helps to look at it on a somewhat daily basis. And overall, I think Sundial has a lot of potential upside. I think that the legalization hype could be much bigger than a lot of the rallies that we've seen in the past. But you'll have to keep an eye on it. You have to make that decision for yourself. And MWS says, smash that like button. That would be much appreciated. That would be much appreciated. All right. And Ivan says, Sundial dropping right before open. Such manipulation. Well, we'll take a peek, actually, at the short interest on Sundial. We'll take a peek at a couple of the statistics on Sundial. I'll pull up ORTX. We'll pull up Google Trends. And we'll see what's going on with Sundial stock. So, let's see, past 7 days. Yeah, so we did on Friday. It looks like we hit our high. Towards the end of the day when Sundial was pumping up, we hit the weekly high of 100 for Sundial search ranking. We're not quite up there right now, right? Overall, Sundial isn't up during the course of after hours. We're down a little bit from where we closed, but not bad, right? We're not down in a big way. We closed around 65 cents. And we're currently sitting at 64. So we're down about a cent. All in all, not a worst case scenario for Sundial. But we will pull up the short interest, see what we've got short interest-wise on the stock. And then we'll pull up some news for Sundial, some interesting stuff that you guys, some of you have seen it before. But we'll pull that up in just a second. All right, but first we'll pull up the short data on ORTX. So looking at this, not much has changed. Not much has changed. And you know what has changed? ORTX has changed. So, all right, ORTX has changed. So look at this, guys. You'll be interested to see this. Now, when they give you the short interest, they give you a confidence interval, and they show you a range of where the short interest could actually be. Because, the way they calculate this, it's not like the institutions just tell them exactly where it is. They're just calculating where the short interest is most likely to be with this line that we look at. And now they're giving you a little range of where it could potentially be. So look at that. Look at that. They have made an improvement, made it more worth the subscription. It costs $80 a month to subscribe to ORTX. So thanks, I guess, for making this update. So they're guessing that the short interest is at 245 million shares short, 245.99 million shares short, about 12% of the free float. So all things considered, not too much has changed. But notably, we are now guesstimated to be at the lows since June. So they've updated some of their past data. It looks like, the lows of August used to be a little bit lower. So now we're at the lowest short interest since June, or at least we're guesstimated to be at the lowest short interest since June. So interesting stuff. Now, hopefully we'll get a green open on Sundial, and there are a bunch of reasons why we should. We'll take a peek at that in a second. And before we do, I'm going to create a poll and ask what your price target for Sundial is. Or actually, I'll ask at what price will you sell Sundial? All right, so we're going to put in $1. We're going to put in $2. We're going to put, well, yeah, okay. So here we go. $3 and, maybe we have to change this a little bit. We'll do 2. There's only 4 options, unfortunately. I thought we could have done 5 options. All right, here we go. So there we go. $5 plus. All right, let me know what you guys think. Make sure to vote in this. Yeah, and Zach says make sure 0 isn't optioned. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think Sundial's going to 0, but we'll see. So we've got this tweet from, some people don't like him, some people do. We keep politics out of it, but I like what he said in this tweet. He said, Chuck Schumer, Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats, said, here's what Sen Booker and Ron Wyden and I just told the Senate. Okay? So he tweeted this out. He said, as more and more states legalize cannabis, the Senate's long overdue in addressing this issue and righting the wrongs of the past. With your help, we plan to introduce comprehensive cannabis legalization soon. So Chuck Schumer wants to legalize cannabis and soon, or at least introduce it to the Senate, which is about as much as he can do to push legalization forward, right? He can introduce it, he can rally support for it, but at the end of the day, it looks like Chuck Schumer really wants cannabis legalized, as do a couple of other important people. And these people are quite numerous, so we'll take a look at one. We'll take a look at 2, really. One, obviously, you guys know her, Representative Nancy Mace. She published or proposed the States Reform Act. She's in the House, Republican from South Carolina. She really wants that to get passed. But Amazon, you guys have probably noticed this is actually coming from Amazon's public policy account. Amazon wants this bill to be passed as well. Okay, Amazon actually said, we're pleased to endorse Representative Nancy Mace's States Reforms Act. Like so many in this country, we believe it's time to reform the nation's cannabis policy, and Amazon is committed to helping lead the effort. So we finally got some big business behind cannabis legalization. Really exciting stuff to see. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than Amazon. That's one of the biggest companies in not just the United States, but in the world. So if they don't have any influence on cannabis legalization, then I don't know who would. Now, the third group, and my favorite group of people who are saying that they want cannabis to be legalized, it's actually Americans in general, okay? Americans overwhelmingly say cannabis should be legal for recreational or medical use. 60% of people say full legalization for medical and recreational use. 31% say for medical use only it should be legalized. So 91% say it should be legal in some form and that the federal government shouldn't have it on that controlled substances list, right? 8% say that it shouldn't be legal. So all in all, my favorite group of people right here, Americans, are saying that it should be legal. I mean, forget the politicians. That's the one that I really care about. But, the politicians are important too, right? The politicians, we kind of need them to do it for us because we can't, unfortunately, at least at the federal level, legalize it ourselves. Some states will put it on the ballot. We've got some states doing that this year even. But when it comes to federal stuff, you kind of need the federal government to do its thing and actually work towards legalization. So we're hitting up 63 cents on Sundial. It looks like we've used that as a little bit of a support in the after hours. We're going to see if we break down below it. Like I said, we could be moving down a little bit today because we did have an outsized move yesterday, but I would much rather see the momentum continue. If we were trending a little bit better on Google Trends, that would be a little bit more bullish for the stock. We'll see what we're doing on StockTwits if we're up there. Hopefully we are. Let's see what we've got on StockTwits. Okay, we're not, look at this. We're not quite on the StockTwits most mentioned. We need to generate a little bit of hype. I'm doing my part, guys. I named the stream everyone loves Sundial stocks, so we need some people out there. We need some people tweeting, Google searching, posting stuff to StockTwits. We need to, if we want to see this thing rally, then we would need some additional support, most likely. And Zach says the real play on cannabis would be to be able to buy stock in the taxes the government gets with legalization. Yeah, that would be interesting. I bet there's a way to bet on it. I bet there's a betting market where you could bet on how much taxes the government is going to raise from certain things, but it probably wouldn't be the best bet you could make, right? They'd probably stack the odds against you. So, oh well. That would be nice if we could get in on taxes. So look at that, Sundial sinking down a little bit. So far, we're down 6% on the day, and I'm not too happy to see it because the markets are actually, if you look at the S&P, we're actually at break even on the markets. So Sundial at the moment is underperforming the markets. Now, will we hit 60 cents? Will we bounce off of 61 like we did in the after hours? We've yet to see, right? This is the first couple of bars, and it's nothing that we haven't seen before. Stock Raider says huge, a pump and dump a coming. I sure hope we at least get a pump, right? I don't know if I want the dump, but I would be understanding if there was one, right? I'd potentially be happy to see a little bit of a dump if I'm selling some call options against it. But I would like a pretty sizable pump before we see any kind of dump first. I wouldn't call what we saw Friday afternoon a pump and dump, right? That was a big move to the upside. People loved seeing it. And so far from the highs to the lows, from the close, we're down 6%. From the highs to where we're at now, we're down about 10%. So we've lost about 10% or 6.8 cents on Sundial, it looks like, from where we were. Now, if we'll hold at 61, hopefully we will. But we've yet to see. We've yet to see what's going to go on with Sundial. Now, let's see if we're getting any traction on Reddit. Reddit doesn't tend to talk too much about Sundial anymore, but we'll pull it up for old time's sake. Let's see, where is Sundial? It used to be up here. There's Tilray up at number 48, but Sundial is nowhere to be seen. Man, are we even in the top 100? Let's Control F for Sundial. No, Sundial didn't make it onto the top 100. Nobody on Reddit's talking about Sundial stock, even after their big move. Wow, we are sinking, and somewhat quickly. Somewhat quickly. This is not a good Valentine's Day for Sundial. BB says start selling calls at 420. That's probably a place where I'll be selling some of them. Yeah, I'll probably start selling some around there. I'll probably sell some before then, because once a stock really starts running up and the implied volatility gets out of control, the options premium, even for options way out of the money, is quite high. It's quite high. Let's see. So Bob says, wait until March when the merger between Alcana happens. That will make boom boom candles. I think that could be good for Sundial, right? That when they do get more people coming into it, when they get all of those Alcana investors now holding Sundial shares, that could potentially drive some support for the stock. Now, there are two ways it could go. Maybe some of the investors get those Sundial shares and they just want to cash out, right? They might not be too interested in holding a cannabis stock. They might just decide to cash out, sell their shares, dump them, and that wouldn't be great for the stock price if a lot of people decide to do that. The other option is those investors could decide, hey, I've got this new stock in my portfolio. I like what it's all about. They're a good company. They just bought out a company that I was interested in. I'm going to keep holding this stock, and in fact, I'm going to buy more, because those investors will actually be somewhat flush with cash, depending on how much Alcana they had, because part of the transaction agreement, part of the buyout, is actually going to give them not just shares of Sundial, but also cash. So let's take a peek at the Alcana deal and see what they're getting. So we'll pull it up right here. Sundial, in order to buy out Alcana, is giving them, here we go, 8.85 common shares of Sundial and $1.50 in cash. So that's the buyout deal per share of Alcana. So they'll have not just shares of Sundial, but cash as well. They'll also have cash on the balance, or on their balance sheet, on their private balance sheets, and they can then Maybe some of them will decide to use some of that cash to buy up Sundial stock. We'll see. We'll see. It looks like Sundial is bouncing off the 61 cent support. So look at that. Maybe we'll even draw a little support line there and hope that it doesn't break through. That we've definitely seen on Friday, at least, we saw some volatility around that level, right? We saw some volatility there. Then in the after hours, or I guess in the pre-market, actually, in the very early pre-market, we bounced off of 61, and we just did it again. Hopefully we'll continue to use that as support. And even more hopefully than that, hopefully we won't need to use that as support. Hopefully we'll just see green. Looks like we just made highs of the trading day on Sundial. This little green wick right here is above where we opened, so things could be looking up for us. Things could be looking up. The other cannabis stocks, let's see, they're not actually green. Cannabis stocks overall are not green. Tilray is down about 1%. MJ&A down 2.94%. Aurora Cannabis is down 1.75%. And DWAC also down 3.5%, breaking through the $80 support. Hopefully we'll actually bounce back above it. Usually we play around it for a little bit before coming back up above. At least that's what we've done the past while. There have been a couple of times that we've played with $80 in the past. So hopefully we'll get back up there with DWAC. It looks like we're on the way. Looks like we're coming back up. And Sundial making new highs of the trading day. Now all we need is to turn green. We need to get back up above 66 cents, I believe, 65 cents to be green on the day. And hopefully we can get to 70 cents. That would be a good spot to get to. If we could get to 70 cents today, I'm sure a lot of people would be very happy with that. We've been there before, and we can get there again. In fact, the past time that we got bounced down was actually off of 69 cents. So we rallied a bit past. Yeah, look at that. So the past time we got bounced down was off 69 cents, basically 70 cents. I mean, when you have a support level or a resistance level, it's not as if the stock hits it every time. I mean, you can even look at it with DWAC, what happened with them over the past bit, where they've been using $80 as a support, right? They're sometimes going past $80. This dip, they actually got as low as 77. They just did the same thing. They got down to 77 again. So it's not always that they literally use $80 exactly, or that Sundial is always going to use $70 as the exact resistance. It's that range, right? A couple of cents on either side, a couple of percentage points on either side. Same with DWAC. And if they just literally bounced off of this stuff exactly like they did with 61 cents just this morning, then it would be way too easy for traders or algorithms to just take easy trades all the time. And that's essentially why you see that not happening, because people will try to get in on the trade early. If they think that Sundial is going to start moving down at 70 cents, we'll pull up the 90-day chart for this. If they think that Sundial is going to start moving down at 70 cents, then they'll decide to sell at 69, and then that actually ends up moving the stock price down. So it's a range with these things a lot of the time. And if you're holding for the long term, it does not matter very much. You don't need to worry too much about it, but it is useful to understand a bit of why the price action is moving where it is from a technical perspective, because I think that diffuses and dispels a lot of the questions that people have, because they're wondering, if they see Sundial maybe hit up 70 cents and then bounce down, they're wondering, well, what bad news came out? Why is Sundial moving down now? Sometimes it's just a technical thing. There are a lot of algorithms out there trading. There's a lot of people out there trading, not even algorithms only. There's people out there still nowadays. There's still people out there. It's not just computers trading, but there are a lot of computers trading. And if we actually look this up, we can actually figure out how many trades are algorithmic. So look at this. So a study was done, and I'll pull this up. Look at this. There are more algorithmic trading. There's more algorithmic trading than there is human trading. And this study, algorithmic trading is accounted for around 60 to 73% of the overall United States equity trading. So most of the time, it's a robot making a trade, not a person. And, crazy stuff. We're already being outcompeted by the robots. So a lot of the time, they will react to these support and resistance levels just because that's what humans used to do psychologically in the past. and the algorithms are still reacting to the past price action that they've experienced while trading, and there are still people trading to these psychological levels as well, which is kind of interesting because it's imparting our psychology onto these AIs and these algorithms. So it's interesting to see that even if humans ceased existing or completely stopped trading, they would probably, the algorithms would probably continue trading similar to how humans traded and just compete with each other in a very human way. So interesting to see that they are still reacting to these support and resistance levels that are just at psychological levels most of the time, right? It's increments of 10 cents or $1 or $10, depending on what the stock price is. It's interesting to see that. So cool stuff. And Bob says, ban those computers. And good morning, Jordan. Good morning, Jordan. Yeah, I don't know about banning the computers. I think that they do tend to help out with liquidity. So I think it's nice to have some of that because I enjoy liquidity, and liquidity ends up being good for markets. And the United States markets are the largest and most liquid in the world because, in part, of the algorithmic trading. Also, they're one of the most secure markets, and people like putting their money in supposedly less risky areas. They've also experienced tremendous growth in the past, and people like the idea of getting in on that growth. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, there are pros and cons to it. Some of the cons are maybe those algorithms are eventually going to be a little bit better than the best people at trading, and there's no competing with them. You never know. And they can certainly be used to manipulate prices in effective ways, right? I'm sure that if someone wanted to manipulate prices, they wouldn't literally be there sitting, sending in their own buy and sell orders. They'd just use an algorithm to put in a large sell order if they wanted to move a stock down whenever a stock started moving up in a significant way or something like that. You could probably program an algorithm to do it. And, I'm sure these algorithms are the best friends of the shorts and the hedge funds and the institutions. Anyone who wants to manipulate a stock, they're probably best friends with those algorithms. Now, I have looked into getting an algorithm and having it trade just automatically, right? You just put money into an account and you just set up the algorithm and you say, go for it. Most of the time, those don't seem to work out too well. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos, a couple of tutorials, and from what I've seen, they don't tend to work out too well. They're not actually that good. And maybe you could find one, maybe you could find a lucky one, but they seem relatively hard to set up. They seem like it's kind of invasive on your PC, and I just wouldn't want that. So overall, I've not tried it myself. I'm not too interested. I'd rather just buy stocks that I believe have a good potential to move up significantly in the future. And if they do, then sell some covered calls, sell some shares, and collect profits. That's what I tend to do, but to each their own. I'm sure there are some tech-savvy teenagers out there who are building these algorithms from scratch themselves and making bank when the algorithms are making all these buy-sell decisions for them. So look at this. Sundial making new highs of the trading day. This could be a good day for Sundial after all. Now, it's impossible to say where a stock price really is going in the short term, right? You can't actually know for sure. Anything could happen at any moment. We could get either good or bad news coming out for Sundial, and it could be moving down. It could blast right through the 61 cent support and move downwardly in a massive way, or it could move up. Now, there's no way to know for sure, but what I think is one of the important things, if you want to make a good, swing or long-term investment, is thinking about the company and thinking about what could be moving them up and thinking about how likely it is that something that could be moving them up will happen. Now, what I think we've done with Sundial and what a lot of us realize is that there are a ton of catalysts for legalization. I think that people understand that not only do Americans want it, because obviously Americans have wanted it for a long time. Americans and voters don't actually have as much influence as we would like to think on what laws get passed, but now we're really getting the trifecta, right? We've got, or the quadfecta, whatever it is, right? We've got Americans supporting it. We've got Republicans supporting it. We've got big business supporting it. And we've got Democrats supporting it. So who else is there that we really need to support this before we really get legalization? And that's step one in identifying, what might be driving a stock up. Right now you can kind of guess. All right, it seems likely that we'll probably see legalization in the nearish future, right? Because we've got a lot of people making that bet. Then you can identify stocks. Well, what stocks do well when legalization is on the horizon, or there's legalization hype, or just generally have the potential to do well when when their sector is rallying, right? Sundial, I think, is a prime candidate. Now, there are a bunch of good stocks, right? I'm not just holding Sundial stock in the cannabis sector, right? I'm holding Tilray. You can pull up Tilray. Tilray certainly did very well. They got up to $67. They're currently trading at $7. So they got up pretty high as well. They certainly have some pump potential, and I'm very bullish on Tilray as well. But you never know which one is going to be the big one that ends up making the biggest move, the most outsized move. So potentially it's going to be Sundial. Potentially it's going to be Tilray. It might be Aurora Cannabis, just randomly. I hold some Aurora Cannabis just in case. I hold some Organigram, OGI. And, any one of these, all of these were rallying big during the meme rally, and the part of it was cannabis legalization hype. But I think that actual legalization could see these things getting even higher than they've gotten in the past. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm not recommending that anyone make any moves based off of what I'm saying. That's just something that I think, right? But what's important is that even though I'm pretty bullish on legalization and pretty bullish on these stocks that could be moving up on that news, it doesn't mean that I'm putting all of my money, all my capital in these cannabis stocks, and especially not all of it in one stock. So I think that is an important thing just for peace of mind, because like I said, you never know what's going to happen in the markets for sure. There's crazy stuff that happens every day. And at any moment, a huge scandal could come out. Anything could happen. One of these companies could, report, oh, we lost all of our money. Someone stole it. It's all gone. We're declaring bankruptcy. And you never know what's going to happen with these stocks at the end of the day. So I like to have a well-diversified portfolio as well. Although I've got a decent chunk in cannabis legalization, I think that it helps my mental game, right? And to not be worried on a day-to-day basis, even when you see a stock tanking day after day after day, it helps me to know that I've got a well-diversified portfolio, that I've got some cash on hand, that I've got some investments in things like precious metals and cryptocurrency, so alternative assets to just stocks and whatnot, and that I'm not too worried about what happens day to day or even month to month. And to be honest, not even year to year, right? If stocks just continue to tank for a year, I think I'd be okay, right? I don't think I would actually be in a situation where I was destitute or needed to sell any stocks. I think I'd be all right if stocks tanked for a year. Past that point, hopefully I would be generating some income. But even if it did tank for a year, I'm at a point where I'm pretty sure I'd just be okay. Maybe in perpetuity. Obviously my lifestyle wouldn't be improving. It would probably stay pretty stagnant, but I've got a pretty sweet situation at the moment. And Bob agrees, you got to be diversified. Yeah, I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, not being diversified in the beginning when people are first starting off. And it can be brutal for some people. It can be really amazing for others, if they have a lucky pick and they make a ton of money. And I will say, the less money you have, the less diversified you probably have to be. Sometimes it can make sense just to make a bet on something if you've got a little bit of cash. And I'm not saying make an options bet, right? The options, if you're just buying a short-term options contract, that's a good way to lose everything because those really do expire worthless. But I think that, if you've only got $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 and you want to make a bet on a stock and not be diversified, that's the time to do it. Not when you have, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars at risk. I don't think that's the best thing to do now. I see someone mentioning Shiba Inu. So we'll take a peek at CoinMarketCap. Microsoft might participate, says Bob. Who knows really, but worth the gamble. Yeah, so let's take a peek at Shiba Inu. We'll take a peek at all the cryptos. Bitcoin has been sitting stagnant over the weekend, still around 42, 43,000. It looks like it's moved down over the weekend. It looks like it moved down just a touch to the $42,000 range. So all in all, Bitcoin not having the best price action, but all things considered, they're doing way better than they were just a couple of weeks ago. Ethereum, same thing, sitting around $3,000, quite close to it at least. And Shiba Inu is down at the number 14 crypto by market cap, $16 billion market cap. So, it helps to compare these things and look at Shiba Inu and say, all right, Sundial's market cap is 1.3 billion. Shiba Inu has a market cap of 16 billion. Now that's not at the highs, right? That's at what they've fallen to after the highs. They were more than double this at one point. They were They were well above double this. So they were at 0.00008 cents, and now they're at 0.00003 cents. So they were more than double the market cap at one point. So around maybe $40 billion market cap, somewhere around there, right? Sundial's market cap currently at 1.3 billion. Maybe they could 10x, maybe they could 20x at some of these higher valuations, right? If they really get a lot of momentum behind them, like Shiba Inu had, maybe they could 20x, and they wouldn't even be at the peak of what Shiba Inu was. It really depends on how much hype flows into these cannabis stocks based off of legalization. I think that's going to be a big determining factor for how high these stocks can go, how much money, how much institutional money especially wants to get into them. Now, we'll take a look at Dogecoin, and the reason we will is because I was just watching the Iced Coffee Hour podcast with Graham Stephan, which he did with the Dogecoin Millionaire, who I followed a bit during the whole Dogecoin rally. I sold most of my Dogecoin at these levels, right? I sold some at 42 cents, I think it was. I sold some. I was just selling at this point. I was just selling $1,000 a day for a while, and Dogecoin Millionaire had about $3 million worth of Dogecoin at one point, and it was crazy to see how high his account went. Now, he bought in actually at a higher price than I did, but he put in way more money than I did. So he had about $3 million at the peak of this thing, and he held all of it, and he's still holding all of it, and he's bought more. And now it's worth around, I think, $600,000 or $700,000 at these prices. It was a crazy decline, and he was buying some on the dip, which is why it's worth as much as it is. But I was watching his live stream, and he was talking about making decisions for tax reasons, right? He was talking about not wanting to sell then because it would have been a short-term capital gain instead of a long-term capital gain. And I'm kind of in the boat of Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary has talked about this, and he's said, don't make decisions purely based off the tax implications. If there's something that's soaring high, sell it, pay the tax, because at the end of the day, you still have to pay tax on it. You still has to pay the short-term capital tax gain on it. And the only difference, I think, they did the math on the podcast, and they figured how much would he have saved in taxes selling then versus selling now. And all he would have saved in taxes was about $400,000, but he ended up losing a couple million in value because the price just dropped instead of him selling. So he only would have paid about $400,000 more in taxes, and instead he decided, to hold on, and he lost $1 million. And to be fair, he can do that if he wants. It was his first big win. It was his first big win. It's still a massive win. He's still about 3x'd his money. He was buying in closer to 5 cents than, he wasn't really buying at these peaks. He was buying closer to 5 cents, and now it's sitting around 14, 15 cents. So he's made a big gain, and it was his first big win. So it's understandable that he just decided to hold. He thought it was going to the moon. But that's why I'm saying to you guys, because I've been through the ringer before, right? I've been through some big gains. I learned from the first big Sundial and Cannabis stock run-up when, my accounts were exploding, and I wish that I'd taken a bit of profits there. I did obviously sell some covered calls, but I wish that I had done a little bit more than selling covered calls. I wish they had sold some shares. Now, that did really help me out, because then when Dogecoin ran up, I knew what to do. I knew you should be selling when you make insane amounts of money. And now I'm trying, not to give you guys financial advice or anything like that, but to encourage you guys to think about where might you like to sell, right? What account value do you want to see? When do you want to start thinking about getting out of a win? Because a lot of people, on their first run, they don't think about getting out. They just think about this thing, it's going to the moon, it's going to infinity, and they don't realize that, some things might, maybe something will one day, but we tend to not go to infinity, right? Stocks do tend to have these peaks, and it's not a bad idea to start thinking when they're low about what price do you want to sell at, and then to stick to that plan. So that's something that I would think is a good idea for you guys to do, but I'm not recommending it to anyone. It's just, if you want to start thinking about what prices to sell at, start thinking about it. Start thinking about, if you get life-changing money, how much is that to you? What does it mean to have life-changing money? And W124 Panzer said he decided to hold because he got greedy and thought it would go higher. Well, he lost. Yeah, I think that he definitely thought it would go higher, because he said that he would sell his Dogecoin either in 1 year so that he could get the capital gains. And he probably thought it would be much higher than it is now because he's still holding on to it. Or he would sell when it hit $10. And, looking at the market caps of these things, I think it was pretty obvious that we probably weren't going to get to $10, but so be it. That's what he thought. And look at this, AMC taking off. AMC is soaring right now. Look at that. We're up 1.9%. We just made a big bounce off of about $18.40. So a lot of people are happy to see it. Sub-Zero is happy to see it. And hopefully we'll continue moving up with AMC. I'm still holding strong on AMC, even though I'm down a little bit at this point. Who isn't down? Anyone who got in the past 2 weeks, and that was their first buy-in, is probably green. Or anyone who was buying in more than a year ago is green on AMC. So, there are a couple people who are green, but I think a lot of people mostly built up their positions in these higher areas. I was fortunate enough to not build it up there. I built it up more so around here. So around the $20 area, in between 20 and $30 is where I was mostly buying my AMC. So I'm happy to see it. And, I've already collected some premium selling covered calls on it. So that's something I plan to continue to do. And I think AMC is a really good one for that because there is so much support and so much momentum behind it sometimes that it tends to perpetually have a very high implied volatility. And so if you're looking at the AMC options, the AMC options are always somewhat expensive, right? You can always sell them for a pretty big profit. I mean, look at this. AMC currently trading at $19. And you can look at the $23 calls. And you could potentially be selling these $23 calls for about a month out. And you could be making 10% a month just about selling these $23 calls. So either you're collecting 10% on if you bought into AMC right now, you sell these for $1.90 just about. And then potentially you have to sell it at 23, right? So you make another big profit on top of that. Or it stays where it is, it moves a little bit lower, and you just collect the premium. So that's a way to do it potentially. AMC is a good one for buying in, selling some covered calls at a higher price, and then either way, either it moves up or it moves down, and you've made some money. You have more money than you would have had just buying in and doing nothing either way. So it's something that I'm pretty excited about with AMC. There are definitely a bunch of potentially expensive options to be selling on that one. So that's what I like to do with it. And then you can essentially reduce your cost basis. If you're just perpetually selling those, you sell those for a couple of months, you've essentially whittled down what AMC cost you initially to buy because you've just been making premium every month, collecting some passive income from holding AMC. So that's what I like to do with that. And James Wood says, if history repeats on MJ&A, investors could really be at the right place at the right time. Yeah, James Wood likes MJ&A quite a bit. And currently it's at 1.6 cents right now. So it has moved down over the more recent past, but I am still holding some MJ&A. I'm still holding, I think, 100,000 shares of it, which I bought in. What did I buy in? I'm down $100 on it, but I bought 100,000 shares at 1.8 cents. So if this thing goes to $1, which I don't know if it'll get to $1, but in the past I'll say it got to 22 cents. So we'll see. If it got to $1, then that would be $100,000 right there. I don't think it'll get to $1, but if we got to even if it got to 20 cents again, that would be $20,000 right there. So I would not be too disappointed to see that now. Obviously, it's a risky play, right? It's a very cheap over-the-counter penny stock, and we'll see what happens with it. But it's something that I'm willing to throw a little bit of capital into. Cost $1,800 to get 100,000 shares. Sounds too good to be true, and we do tend to see pretty big rebounds if you look at all time out of the $2 level, right? Sometimes it can stick below $2 for a little bit, but the past time that it actually stuck below $2 for a long time, 2 cents. The past time that stuck below 2 cents for a long time, it actually ended up exploding to 22 cents, and we got about a 10x on that. And in the past, we've used 2 cents as a support for a very long time, you can see. Pretty much the entire history of the company. So I'm excited for the potential that MJ&A has. Thank you, James Wood, for pointing that out. And it's got to 55 cents, he says. Look at that. So I guess, yeah, it actually, at these highs, the chart says it got to $1.26, but I don't think that, I think that might be a glitch on the chart. The past time that you're talking about is probably these times when it got up to 55. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see some good stuff from MJ&A in the future. Like I said, I hold a bunch of these different cannabis stocks because you never know which one's going to make the most outsized gain. But what I'm betting on essentially isn't any individual stock doing incredibly well, although, I am pretty bullish on Sundial. But I'm betting more so on overall we'll get cannabis legalization. These stocks will all be running up. That's my hope. And we are now at 10 o'clock. So it is just about time to be ending this thing. Thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed what we were doing here. If it was anyone's first time, feel free to note that we do this pretty much every day. Every day that the market's open at 9, we start these live streams. So feel free to join us. We have fun. We talk stock, have fun in the comments and all that. So other than that, guys, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 sharp. We've got some stuff to talk about maybe. We'll see what happens throughout the course of the day, and hopefully there's some interesting stuff to talk about. Other than that, though, have a great day. Bye, guys.